Hey, what's up, everyone? I am here with director J.A. Bayona. We're going to talk about A Monster Calls. Your movie is getting some amazing reviews. It premiered, I believe, at Toronto Fest. Comes out later this year, around Christmas time here in the States. First of all, I love the movie. It's a deeply emotional, effective movie. It deals with a lot of heavy themes. I would like to ask you specifically which themes in that story made you want to turn this very beloved book into a movie?
It's true that I heard a lot about the book before I read it. And when you read it, you have an immediate reaction to the material. It's so emotional. Yeah. But I thought that what was beautiful about Patrick Ness's work is that somehow he built up a very complicated story dealing with delicate themes like cancer, bullying, with a beautiful idea of telling the truth. I mean, and how truth sometimes can be something more, not telling the truth can be more painful than the truth itself. Yeah. And you know, as a storyteller, because it's a book also about storytelling, my job is the same. I mean, you need to find the truth and express it. You need to find what is the story about and express it. Right. And at the time, I remember at that time that I was reading a lot about storytelling, and it was like a coincidence, but it felt like the right thing to do. I really wanted to do this film.
Well, you know, the monster itself is scary. He has moments of warmth and humor, but he's not a cuddly creature he's not, you know, the BFG. I'm just saying that it's. Can you talk about the monster as sort of, you know, what the metaphor of the monster is in this movie? Because the character itself, and I don't think this is really a spoiler, the character itself realizes it is a figment of his imagination and is there for a purpose. But can you talk about the monster and the metaphor it sort of represents?
Well, I think the monster, what I thought it was very interesting is the solution. Yeah. Is when you cannot find when you cannot fix something for yourself, and then you create a monster, and that monster will help you to cope with the situation. And I thought that was very interesting because there's this contradiction that you think the monster is what you're scared of and is the solution. And there's every character has his own contradiction, you know, in the story. I mean, the mother, for example, she doesn't want to hurt the kid, but not telling him the truth, he's hurting him more. So there's always this very interesting aspect of contradiction in every character. And the monster, what I thought it was more like a revelation, was to find out that he was the solution.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting elements there is that, you know, there are white lies involved with trying to extend hope to people, and the monster basically calls that out. One thing I've noticed, and it's just as somebody who grew up, who lost a parent at a very early age in life, you know, I've noticed a lot of movies, especially fantasy films, tend to try to sugarcoat death or tell a child that it can be cheated somehow. Is that something you've noticed? Because I've noticed, at least in your films, that it's not sugarcoated. It's not, you know, you don't talk down to people.
I think one of the best things from Patrick's book is how seriously he takes childhood, and he treats kids as equal. He doesn't do a difference. You know, I think that the psychological journey that goes Connor in this film is so well depicted in the book that I thought that was very close to what was my intention in The Impossible or The Orphanage. You know, right. So we were very in the same page. I think that it's not about, as you were saying, sugarcoat, but I think that you need a fantasy in order to process reality.
Right.
I think this is how we learn the world. I mean, it's like, this is why we go to the movies. This is why we read books. I mean, we understand better reality through fantasy, through the invention of what is storytelling. You know, and I thought that was very interesting. Because this is what we do as filmmakers. We try to tell the stories to the audience in order to make them understand things about themselves.
And I think you've referred to it in the past too as the healing power of art, and that is definitely, and you know, we'll be spoiler aware here in how we talk about this, but that in and of itself is part of the story because, you know, your main protagonist, Connor, little boy, he is very artistic. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and also then the stories themselves that the monster tells Connor. The style of the film, it turns to an animated film, and a very unique looking animated film. Can you talk about coming up with the style for that? Because it was beautiful that it didn't just turn into a CG animated thing. It was it had a handcrafted feel to it, even if it wasn't. I don't know how you did it, so you could tell us about that.
It was one of the most difficult things about this film is to tell the story. It was a very difficult story to tell and to put on the screen, especially the stories. And from the very beginning, I knew that I didn't want to put actors playing stories inside another story.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be that would be distracting. So the idea of animation came to me, and also I had this idea that I wanted Connor to be obsessed with drawing. That is something that was not in the book. And I wanted to talk about that because I was obsessed with drawing when I was a kid. Yeah. Drawing somehow saved my life, you know. I was a very introspective kid, and I was drawing all the time, and I was living into that fantasy world. So for me, it was quite obvious that, Connor had to call the monster by drawing somehow the monster.
Well, that's really powerful. I didn't realize it wasn't in the book. I'll admit I have not read the book. Do you think that that particular animation style, though, I did like that it was like watercolors and stuff like that. Can you talk about just honing in on the type of style that you wanted to do with the animation?
Yeah, we had to look for a resemblance between Connor's drawings and the drawings that Connor has. That he has his house full of drawings, full of pieces of art. He's very creative, and the stories are the reflection of that world, of that psychology. There's lots of small details in the animations that you can see also in the house, like small figures.
Right.
Maybe even the clothes of Connor are reflected in some of the characters. The clothes of the characters, I mean, you will see some of the elements that in the clothing of the mother or the grandmother in the characters in the animation. So it's the way that Connor uses to process reality using those tales to understand what's going on.
Let's talk about the monster itself, because it's played by Liam Neeson. Now, was that a motion capture performance? Can you talk about just coming up with the look for the character? Because the last time we saw a talking tree on screen, it was Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's a very cute, cuddly character. So you guys must have been aware of, how can we differentiate the design and sort of the overall feel of that character, so that you're not getting too many comparisons to it.
Well, we have an inspiration from the very beginning, which was Jim Kay's illustrations in the book. A Monster Calls is an illustrated book, and the inspiration for the monster came from those illustrations. We did a lot of designs for the monster, and the more designs we did, the more we realized that it had to be very simple. Yeah. That somehow we didn't want a monster that looks like a tree, but a tree that looks like a man.
Right, right.
So and that was there is a beautiful drawing in Patrick Ness' book from Jim Kay, where you can see the monster sitting down on a rooftop, and that was so powerful that we realized that after doing 200 designs, we had to go back to that design and make it more like that.
Can you talk about directing Liam Neeson in a motion capture performance, and also one thing that I really liked about it, in the fact that you did do motion capture, is it really does feel like his eyes there.
Yeah.
And that makes a world of difference. It puts a soul into another. Otherwise a character that is not an actual tangible being. So can you talk about working with Liam on that, and the decision to do it as a motion capture performance rather than a strictly CG created character?
Well, we wanted to capture Liam Neeson. From the very beginning, we thought that Liam Neeson had a lot had a lot of things that would remind us the monster. You know, he's Irish and he kept his Irish accent. The monster is very inspired by the Green Man.
Right, right.
And he had this sense of wisdom, and it reminds you all this mythology, Celtic mythology. So we wanted to keep that. We want to keep his soul. And motion capture was a very interesting experience. It's very impressive how can you capture a performance and putting on a digital character. We try to keep the face as much close as possible to a human face, so that helped us in order to capture the performance. And of course the eyes was the most important thing. There is a line in the film that the mother says, life is in the eyes. So that was like our guide, you know, life is in the eyes. So we have to capture that look that he has.
That line did jump out at me, because I noticed even in the casting of the human characters, they all have very distinct and very powerful eyes. I mean, Sigourney Weaver, Felicity Jones, Toby Kebbell, and then of course your young actor Lewis McDougall. Is that just kind of by chance? Were you specifically looking also for, like, do you cast looking for the eyes of, you know, very interesting eyes and actors too?
That's an interesting question. You're right. I mean, the eyes is the most important element in the face in order to understand how is anyone, you know. It's true that the first time I saw Lewis McDougall, there was some conflict in his eyes.
Yeah.
He didn't look like the other kids. There was something about Connor that was like very similar to Lewis, you know. So and I like that, you know. He's not the usual likable kid that you see in movies. He's kind of like conflicted, and he has this sense of rage. That
he's like a little adult, really, in the movie. You know, he doesn't come across. He seems wise beyond his years, but not precocious.
It was very impressive in the audition, because all the kids, for the emotional stuff, all the kids started to cry. You know, so they were performing the Connor crying, and he didn't want to cry in those scenes. He was all about rage, and you find this kid that doesn't want to cry, and I thought that was so unique, so powerful. There was so much truth that from the very beginning it was obvious that he had to be Connor.
Yeah. Now you seem to be drawn to mother-son stories. I don't see enough of those in movies. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, why you're drawn to that? Because that's the thing that really got me right in the feels, was that it was a mother-son story, you know. So can you talk about that?
I think there is not a stronger link, a stronger bond than mother and son, you know.
Yeah.
And it's such a great chance of doing a film about that. I mean, I like it. I think that The Orphanage, The Impossible, and this one, they're pretty intense. They're very emotional, but they are movies that at the end they are you can have a sense of optimism at the end of the film, you know. For me, the whole film was a journey towards the light. So it starts with a kid waking up from a nightmare, and finishes with a kid looking to the sun, to the sunlight.
Right.
The only scene that you can see sunlight in the film, you know.
That's
so it's a journey to the light for me.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. What would you like the audience to take away at the end of this movie? I mean, particularly, I think for anybody who's been, you know, who's aware or whose family has been touched by death. You know, there are a lot of, you know, just what would you like them to take away at the end of the film?
I think that the original intention of A Monster Calls was to help, to heal. This is the story has its own story, because it was an English writer, Siobhan Dowd, that wanted to write a book. When she got sick, she wanted to write a book for kids, helping them to deal with loss. Yeah. She couldn't finish the book because she died, but it was Patrick Ness who did it. So and I did the film, and I think that from the very beginning, the seed of this story was the willing to help and to heal. And I think it's a healing film. I think it's a very emotional journey, but people is very happy to see it. And you go to, it's very impressive when you see the film with an audience, because the silence of the end of the screening, and if you're with them, all these people.
There's plenty of sniffling too.
Yeah, yes, it's true. But I mean, it's when you are with them, and there's so many people coming to me and saying thank you for doing this film, you know. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you have a connection or not with the material. People really like the film, and really is very grateful to see it, you know.
It's okay that you're angry. I'm angry too. And if you need to break things,